morning and welcome to this video interview as part of the International Security Journal Leaders in Security video series. So today I have Travis Frain from the UK government's Counter-Terrorism Youth Advisory Group. So welcome Travis, and perhaps you could explain to us a bit about your role within the group.
Sure, so I serve as National Chair of the Counter-Terrorism Youth Advisory Group at the moment, and this is a network of around 100 young people spread out up and down the country who help to advise the police on matters of counter-terrorism policy, and particularly how we improve the implementation of that policy at a community engagement level. So this entails, a number of different things. We have many different programs, one of which is university engagement, and looking at how we can engage students at universities to discuss these issues more openly, to debate them, and get people talking about terrorism and counter-terrorism. But we also have, as I say, a wide range of people up and down the country, some of which are former extremists, some of which are survivors of terrorism, and many others are simply people who are passionate about these issues and who, given the opportunity, would be fantastic additions to counter-terrorism and this arena in general.
So you just mentioned that some of the people within this advisory group have a personal involvement. Are you able to explain how you got involved in this group?
Of course, sure. Well, I, going back, say, 6 years, I had no interest in this area as a career or in any personal capacity, and certainly didn't have any knowledge of it either, beyond the regular Joe. And in March 2017, I was injured in the Westminster Bridge attack in London. Now, I was 19 years old at the time. I was in my first year of university, and it was, for me, it was the first sort of foray I had into this area, and certainly the first experience I had with any of these issues. And talk about being thrown in a deep end. But for me, I felt I couldn't just sort of, crack on with my life as it was before. I felt I had to learn more about these issues.
So, and you talked about other people who've joined the advisory group. How do people get involved in the advisory group? And I'd also like to explore more around what you're doing in spreading this message into the community.
Sure. Well, I mean, this is, as I said, we have members up and down the country. Often members are put forward by, say, their local area. Other people may simply be sort of in the network or aware of our work through, certainly as I mentioned earlier, the university engagement work we do. Your second question, forgive me, what was it you asked?
How does this sort of benefit the community? How do you pass these messages?
The idea for the Resilience Unity project came out of that, and essentially the work of the project is to record the testimonies of people affected by terrorism anywhere in the world, to create sort of like an online, a digital bank, and these are then mapped on an interactive resource that anyone can access for free online. And in particular, we try and market it to students, to staff, to prevent practitioners. The goal behind this is twofold. I mean, one, it memorialises and acts as a sort of digital.
So these testimonials, these transfer of experience, knowledge, where are they coming from? What parts of the world? And how do you gain access to these people?
This is, a club that no one would want to be a part of. And the simple fact is no one chooses to be part of this so-called club of survivors of terrorism. So those who are in that club, you tend to get to know most people. Fortunately, it's a very small club, not as small as I'd like it to be, but it is a pretty small club, and let's hope it stays that way. But because of that, you tend to, whether it's through networks, whether it's through events, you tend to get to know many other survivors, and that sort of balloons. And certainly over the past 5 years, with a lot of the campaigning work I've been doing to try and improve support for victims, it's brought me in contact with a hell of a lot of them. And I've often found, certainly when I started testing the waters for the project, that actually many more of these victims would be involved in counter-terrorism and even in this sort of low-level awareness stuff if they were given the opportunity. And I think sometimes we can be a little bit cautious, overly cautious about contacting victims. We don't want to cause offence, we don't want to further traumatise, but actually there's a massive benefit that can be had from raising awareness of those stories. I mean, again, maybe we're going a little bit off track, but the comparison I always make is the fact that certainly when I was in school, and I'm sure it was the same for many others who might be listening to this, we had talks from Holocaust survivors. That's far more impactful than reading it in a history book. And I think the same can be said for terrorism, because if you listen to enough of these testimonies on the website, it doesn't take long for you to find someone who you have a hell of a lot in common with, such as the nature of terrorism and the fact that it can affect any one of us. And I think it's that aspect of awareness in making it feel real for people that we really need to do more on. And I don't think there's ever too much that we can do in that area, because the more that people are aware of this, the more chance we have of actually keeping our eyes open and preventing future attacks.
So you mentioned awareness. Where can people find resources, and how can people share these resources?
Sure. Well, the Resilience in Unity project, as I said, it's free. You can literally go to resilienceInUnity.com, use the resources, use the mapping tool, use the testimonies we've recorded. As for other resources, in terms of prevention, I'd suggest people get in contact with the local prevent team, see what resources are available regionally, because that can certainly differ from place to place. But actually, on a more general basis, I'd suggest as a bare minimum people take the ACT training, the ACT e-awareness training that's offered by the police. Now this isn't really in the prevention sphere more than it is the sort of what I'd class the hard edge policing side of things, if you will. And of course, you know, when you listen to the training, you would hope that none of us are ever in a position to require it. That said, I think it is a bare minimum that we should all be doing, really, to actually be as sort of upskilled and as trained as we can to respond to these sort of incidents.
So what sort of challenges have you overcome in this program, and where do you see the future of the program?
And certainly when it comes to working with government or public sector, things can come and go, and interest can come and go, and of course the threat doesn't come and go. The threat does not go away. And just as, you know, we may be working on one ideology 1 minute, government and other sort of funders can often just focus on what is the in thing and what is popular to talk about now. And that can be difficult to navigate, because of course we know as professionals working in this area that those threats don't go away regardless of what's popular and what's in right now. So that's a real challenge to navigate. In terms of other challenges, I'd actually say politics in general, and I don't just mean national politics, international politics can be a massive issue as well. And again, starting to sound like a broken record, but I do think this is where the testimonies of survivors, and perhaps having as many survivors who feel possible to work in this area, can be really beneficial, because it cuts through a lot of the rubbish, it cuts through the politics, and it's just, you know, it's the reality of what actually happens. I think it's a one way, certainly maybe it's a blunt tool, but it's one way of really cutting through a lot of that politics and a lot of the nonsense and getting to the nitty gritty of the details.
And so to sort of follow up, what's for the Youth Advisory Group, what's in the future, what's coming up, what can we look forward to?
And we've got several more universities lined up in the works, and certainly if anyone's listening to this, I'd suggest please do get in touch if you've got an affiliation to a university, if you think you can help, because as far as I'm concerned, the more opportunities we get to get this message out there, the better. In terms of the work I do personally, I'm not going away anytime soon, and certainly I intend to be as much of a nuisance as possible, and certainly as much of a nuisance as I need to be to get the changes in place that we need. And certainly when it comes to support for victims of terrorism, there is a lot more that we can do. And as I say, might sound like a broken record, but who knows, maybe if I shout from the rooftops about these issues long enough, someone will listen.
I wish you all the best success, Travis. Thank you very much for your time, and I would suggest that you keep being a nuisance and keep applying the pressure to protect us all. So thanks again for your time, Travis. Thank you.